Hello, my name is Caleb Smith with the Rocket Miner newspaper, here to provide an update for August 15th, 2020. If you have the chance to catch the Rocket Miner, whether on your doorstep in the stands, we have the election guide out. And while there's lots of races that are definitely juicy, and I would encourage you all to take some time to um, dig into the details, double checking where you're going to be voting, what races should you be boning up on, comparing candidates for. I wanted to go in a slightly different direction today. Um, I'd like to read a large portion of an Associated Press article by David Crary, where he talks about a pivotal point in history where um, personal relations and the ability to recognize good advice made a world difference for future generations. The headline of the story is "Heating Mom: Tennessee Lawmaker Helped Women Gain the Vote." 100 years ago this month, women in the United States were guaranteed the right to vote with ratification of the 19th Amendment, secured by 24-year-old Tennessee legislator's decisive vote, cast at the bidding of his mother. Harry T. Burns' surprise move set the stage for decades of slow but steady advances for American women in electoral politics. 2 years ago, today, a record number of women were elected to Congress. On Tuesday, Democratic former Vice President Joe Biden selected Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate, making her the first black woman on a major party's presidential ticket. Byrne, from the small town of Nyota in eastern Tennessee, joined the legislature in 1918 as its youngest member. The following year, Congress approved the 19th Amendment, touching off the battle to win ratification by the legislatures of 36 of the 48 states. The process moved quickly at first. By March 1920, 35 states had ratified, while 8 states, mostly southern, had rejected the amendment. Of the states yet to vote, Tennessee was the only one where ratification was considered possible under the prevailing political conditions. So all eyes turned to the legislature, where lawmakers had the power to grant the women's suffrage movement a victory it had sought for more than 70 years, or deal it a painful setback. At the time, women in more than half the states could vote in presidential elections, but they had no statewide voting rights throughout the South and several other states. Thousands of activists on both sides of the debate poured into Nashville ahead of the special session. The posh Hermitage Hotel became a hotbed of lobbying and political gossip. The amendment was approved 25-4 in the state Senate and sent to the House, where sentiment was divided as its turn to vote came on August 18th, 1920. Anti-suffragists believed they had the votes needed to table the amendment, but that failed in a 48-48 tie. Byrne was among those supporting the motion to table. Next came the decisive vote on whether to ratify. Onlookers expected another tie, which would have doomed the measure. But when Byrne's turn came, he switched sides. His "I" was so unexpected that many onlookers were unsure of what they'd heard, according to the various historical accounts. The amendment passed 49-47. Some wondered if Byrne had been bribed, but the next day, addressing the House, he offered an explanation. He had received a letter from his mother, urging him to buck the anti-suffragist sentiments of many of his constituents and instead support the amendment. "Dear son, hurrah and vote for suffrage," she wrote. "Don't forget to be a good boy and help Mrs. Cat put the rat in ratification. Your mother." That was a reference to Carrie Chapman Catt, a leading suffragist who had come to Nashville to campaign for the amendment. Byrne told the House, "I believe in full suffrage as a right." He added, I know that a mother's advice is always safest for her boy to follow, and my mother wanted me to vote for ratification." Now the story continues, and you can find it at rocketminer.com, and it charts slow progress. It notes that while women have had the right to for American suffrage since 1920, it's still a small percentage of women who are represented in governor positions, making up only about a fourth of the seats in Congress, despite them being about men and women being about roughly split in the population. And just looking at other trends when it comes to who votes, who gets voted in, and whatnot. I just find it interesting that, as pointed out by the story, there were lots of arguments, lots of voices, lots of things filling the air. Similar to kind of how today can often be. And in the chaos, it's hard to figure out where to turn to. What are some of the things that you can rely on? And I'm glad that Mr. Byrne was able to tune out the other voices and recognize good advice, solid direction when he heard it. I hope you all are able to do the same. Today, if you happen to be able to travel to it's Knoxville, Tennessee, you can find a statue of Mr. Harry Byrne sitting on a bed or sitting on a chair, and standing right next to him with her hand on his shoulder is a statue of his mother, who is named Ferb Esminger Byrne. It's quite the family legacy that continues to pay dividends today. Doesn't matter whether you're a woman or not. Doesn't really matter what label you put on yourself, others put on you. Please take advantage of the opportunity to vote this Tuesday and again in November. Or do absentee voting and get it out of the way early and go ahead. Just please vote is what I'm trying to say. If you're like Mrs. if your family's like Mrs. Byrne, it'll make your predecessors happy. This is Caleb Smith with the Rocket Miner newspaper, wishing you a good day and a safe tomorrow.